Carowinds is an amusement park that has really blossomed over the past decade. Before 2010, I didn't think much of this place. In fact, not until Fury 325 came onto the scene did I start to give this park a second look. Well, after building the largest roller coaster with a chain lift, I was then ready to take the trip. Looking over their coaster collection, we will see that they do have a decent variety, including one of the only Flying Dutchmans in operation. The real question is, how good are their roller coasters? Well, I think many will say, including myself, that they have a solid top 4, maybe top 5 depending on who you ask, but the rest start to drop somewhat in overall quality. Before I start ranking their roller coasters, I want to let you know that I wasn't able to ride every single coaster. I had all the major coasters and a good chunk of the rest, but I'll call out the ones I didn't get the ride on. Number 14, Wilderness Run, built by E&F Miller Industries, opened in 1998. This is the kiddie coaster at Carowinds. I really don't have much to say here. The ride was not open during our visit, so I wasn't able to ride it. Looking over the layout, it looks pretty typical, nothing really that stands out, so that's why it's ranked at last place. Number 13, Kiddy Hawk, built by Vekoma, opened in 2003. This is another roller coaster I was not able to ride. Fun fact, I actually did get in line twice, but both times my daughter Braylon got sick, so we had to leave the queue. Because this is a clone copy of Flying Ace Aerial Chase, which is at Kings Island, I have a pretty good idea of what to expect. Assuming the ride handles the same way, there are some of these janky transitions. Well, I don't really know if it's janky transition as much as like the train feels like it's too big for the track, like it just keeps rattling back and forth. It's not the most comfortable ride experience, and also it's just really not that fun, even for a family suspended coaster. There's plenty other better options, including a Freedom Flyer at Fun Spot America and Dragon Flyer at Dollywood. These are two great family suspended roller coasters that blow this coaster out of the water. Number 12, Woodstock Express, designed by John C. Ellen, opened in 1975. This is yet another roller coaster I was not able to ride. The coaster was closed the first day I was there, then it opened for a little bit on the second day, but I just didn't have time to get over and ride this coaster. Woodstock Express is basically a cloned roller coaster, and you can ride a copy of it at Kings Island and Kings Dominion, which I have ridden both, so I didn't feel like I was missing much. Judging by those other rides, I assume that this coaster has a couple nice pops of air, but nothing overly exciting. Again, this is a family wooden roller coaster. Number 11, Carolina Goldrusher, built by Aerodynamics, opened in 1973. This is basically your typical mine train roller coaster. There's really nothing here significant to talk about. It has a nice helix that offers some decent forces, but overall it's a pretty mild ride. The trains aren't really that comfortable, so it's not a ride that I would just hop right back on. And oddly enough, it has a 48-inch height requirement, so at the time Braylon wasn't tall enough to ride it. As to where the best place to ride this roller coaster is, I really don't think there's a good spot. Sit up front, sit in the back, sit in the middle, I really don't think it matters. As far as I'm concerned, this is a one and done attraction. Number 10, Hurler, built by International Coasters, opened in 1994. As a somewhat fan of Thunder Run, which is located at Kentucky Kingdom, which is kind of like a quasi-clone, I was expecting a little bit more from this roller coaster. Unfortunately, I was greeted to an extremely rough ride. This coaster just shimmies and jackhammers throughout the entire layout. At one point, I even smashed my hand against the side of the train, so yeah, with that said, I really didn't like this coaster. Also, for some reason, the operations on this ride were atrocious. I saw waits of upwards of 6 to 7 minutes between dispatches, which I have no idea why. And finally, there really isn't any redeeming quality to this roller coaster. I didn't even get any airtime. As far as I'm concerned, if they cloned Twisted Timbers, I would be fine with that. As the best place to ride, I suggest sitting up front. It should be the smoothest seat, that way you can get off the ride slightly less unharmed. Number 9, Vortex, built by B&M, opened in 1992. Out of all the roller coasters at Carowinds, this is the one I was dreading the most. Everyone has told me that the ride is really bad and expect to be banged up. Well, I really didn't get banged up. It does have a nasty rattle, especially during that corkscrew, but overall, I didn't think it was too bad. There's some decent forces maybe on the vertical loop and the helix, but overall, it's just kind of a bland attraction. I'm also not a fan of the stand-up position, I just don't think it's comfortable. I really don't know where the best place is to ride this roller coaster, perhaps sitting up front or in the back rows should give you the best overall experience. Number 8. Ricochet. Built by Mock Rides, opened in 2002. This is yet another roller coaster I was not able to ride. My second day there, I got the fast lane pass, but this ride does not have a fast lane queue, and the line was pretty long and I just didn't think it was worth the wait. I've been on many Wild Mouse roller coasters, including ones built by Mock Rides, so I didn't really think it was necessary for me to snag yet another ride on another Wild Mouse. Judging by basically every other Wild Mouse coaster that I've been on, I'm assuming this one is pretty typical. They're a fun family attraction, but well, that's basically it. Number 7. Carolina Cyclone. Built by Aerodynamics, opened in 1980. Because this being an older Aerodynamics roller coaster, I was expecting some bad transitions and possibly walking away with a headache. Well, surprisingly, that wasn't the case. The ride isn't butter smooth, but it's actually a pretty decent aero looper. The double loops are pretty intense and I actually grayed out during that moment. The final helix at the end of the ride packs a decent punch as well, which took me by surprise. Overall, this is a pretty decent aero looper and I would have no problem snagging another ride on this in the future. As the best place to ride, I always recommend sitting in the back of aero loopers. I just really like the whip that they provide. Number 6. Flying Cobras. Built by Vekoma, opened in 2009. This is the final roller coaster that I was not able to ride. I did try getting in line for it twice, but the line was pretty long, and I've been on so many boomerang roller coasters, I would rather go ride Fury 325 multiple more times than waste my time waiting for a boomerang coaster. Normally, I would say that this ride has a lot of headbanging, but this has the new vest restraints, which I also experienced on Sidewinder at Hershey Park, and that wasn't really that bad of a ride. So overall, I'm assuming this to be one of the better boomerang coasters. To get the best experience on a boomerang coaster, you have to sit up front or in the very back. That way you get the most of the first drop or the most of the backwards drop. Number 5. Nighthawk. Built by Vekoma, opened in 2004. This was the last of the Flying Dutchman roller coasters that I needed to ride. I've been on all of them, including Firehawk, which is now defunct, Batwing at Six Flags America, and now Nighthawk at Carowinds. If you listen to any of my past reviews on those roller coasters, you know I'm not really a fan of the Flying Dutchman model. Mainly, it's because of the restraints. I just don't like how it holds you into the ride. When you're in the flying position, it puts a lot of weight on your shoulders and it really just doesn't make me feel secure. The layout itself is actually pretty fun. It's a very forceful roller coaster, especially the vertical loop because you're in the laying position. Unlike the other two models, Nighthawk finishes off the ride with corkscrews instead of those inline twists. This is a pretty forceful moment because you're in that laying position, so all the forces are pushing against your chest. I've heard some complain that this ride has a rattle, but I really didn't experience it, so I didn't really think that was an issue. Like most flying roller coasters, I really don't think there is a good row to ride in, maybe sitting up front or in the back, depending if you want that whip, but yeah, overall, I'd say just pick whatever row is available. Number 4. Afterburn. Built by B&M, opened in 1999. If you watch one of my recent videos where I talk about my favorite inverted roller coasters, Afterburn made the list. This is a very forceful inverted roller coaster that took me by surprise. Every inversion is punchy, and that corkscrew at the end of the ride really gives a nice solid whip. Just like almost every inverted roller coaster that I've been on, this one is buttery smooth, providing zero headbanging. Depending on what you prefer, this actually might rank higher on your list, but for me, I really prefer airtime over inversions, so this is why it made it to number 4 instead of a little bit higher on the list. As where the best place is to ride this roller coaster, pretty much like all inverted coasters, I recommend sitting up front, that way you have that uninhibited view, but if you want a little bit more force, head to the back row. Number 3. Intimidator. Built by B&M, opened in 2010. This has to be one of the most hated B&M hypercoasters out there. The ride has earned the nickname Intimidator, well, for good reason. Pretty much every airtime hill has trims on it, which really slow down the train. With that said, you still get some solid airtime, though it doesn't reach those epic levels like you would get on Mako or Diamondback. Even with the trims, I'm still a fan of this roller coaster and don't mind getting multiple rides on this attraction. As for the best place to ride Intimidator, I say head for the back row. That's where you're going to get the most airtime. That first drop gives you a nice solid whip, and that's where you're going to experience the strongest amounts of airtime. If you sit up front, you do get a little bit airtime, I think, on that first turnaround, but because of the trims, I really feel like you lose a lot of the airtime on most of the airtime hills, so head to the back row. Number 2, Copperhead Strike, built by Mock Rides, opened in 2019. This is the one roller coaster at Carowinds that took me by complete surprise. I was not expecting to have this much fun on this roller coaster. The layout is very solid, focusing on hang time, which is unusual for most roller coasters. The ride has at least 3 moments where you have insane amounts of hang time, including that JoJo roll, the first vertical loop, and that cutback. Not only does this roller coaster have good hang time, but there's a couple moments where you get some solid ejector airtime. The transitions are very snappy, whipping you back and forth like crazy. The only real negative about this roller coaster is the launches. They really don't do much at all. They're basically there just to get you up to speed. I think I got my best experience on this ride in the front row, but honestly, every row will be fine. I think you get more hang time up in the front row, but you really can't go wrong with any seat. Alright, that brings us to our number 1, which is Fury 325, built by B&M, opened in 2015. I think no one is surprised that this one made it to the number 1 slot. This is one of the best roller coasters on the planet. I've always been wanting to ride this roller coaster ever since it opened, and then I finally got to ride it this year, and it completely blew me away. Just watching this roller coaster from the distance when you're driving down the highway, or when you enter the park watching it fly by, it's so mesmerizing. I could just watch this roller coaster do its thing all day long. I always knew that this was a massive roller coaster, but it's just something you have to see in person to truly grasp its full size and scale. I know I always call Cedar Point the Manhatten Skyline of roller coasters, but Fury 325 is like freaking Dubai. It's Burj Khalifa just standing there, this massive structure in the middle of a desert. Okay, obviously it's not a desert, but it's this massive structure that just towers over everything around it. As for the ride experience, this is the complete package. It's got great airtime, snappy transitions, powerful forces, I just love the wind blasting against your face, and just an overall solid layout. I recommend that everyone try to get at least one ride in the front row. The airtime may be better in the back row for that first drop, but the rest of the ride is just so much better up there in the front row, feeling the full force of this coaster coming at you. Well, that concludes my ranking of all the roller coasters at Carowinds. This park has a very solid top 4. I could ride these 4 roller coasters all day long. I mean, honestly, I could ride any of these roller coasters by themselves all day long because they're all so much fun. These 4 roller coasters really do complement each other. Intimidator with its airtime, Afterburn with its snappy, forceful inversions, Copperhead Strike with that amazing hang time, and obviously Fury 325, the powerhouse attraction of Carowinds. So, how do you rank the roller coasters at Carowinds? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to click that like button, and always subscribe, that way you continue to have great content coming to you by Extreme Thrills.